The Imperium of mankind is the vast interstellar empire of humanity in Warhammer 40,000. How long, of course, this empire has actually been around for is debatable, as keeping historical documents of importance could be deemed as an act of heresy which would ultimately lead to the punishment of death. In the book The Avenging Son, written by Guy Healy, we get some more important lore looking into the functions of the various departments on Terra dealing with information. And what's interesting about this lore is just how little people actually care in the Imperium about important information. And this comes to bear when the character Laura, who we kind of follow throughout this book as well, she reports that this document that she's holding is of great importance because her tarot cards showed a sign that could be deemed, well, she deems it as a divine intervention from the Emperor, that he's trying to show her a sign that this document is important and it needs to reach certain eyes, it needs to reach Gullimams' eyes. So she takes it to her boss and he simply says, that he knows more about these things and he knows better, and that this is just a silly little mistake, and if she continues with this, he'll have no choice to report her for this. And he also decides to punish her by taking off 30 minutes of her sleep time as well. So it's quite interesting because what this shows is just the sort of 1 degree of incompetency in the Imperium. And it shows that this is also part of the bigger problem with the Imperium. And of course, as this story develops further, we are also introduced to other characters as well. I forget what his name is, but he's a way to become Gilliman's personal historiator, and it's because there is a lack of records about the history between the time that Gilliman was sleeping and everything that happens between then. However, there is some documents, but there's not a lot, and the Imperium's not great at storing documents, and this gets shown even more in depth with this story because as we follow the character Laura, who's introduced to Teasel, who also works in the underhives of this city on Terra, he basically explains that what he's doing is he's mining through all of these scrolls and documents and looking for mistakes that adepts make, because this can lead to then a prosecution, which then of course he can get money from that. And whilst he's talking about this, like these 3 prosecutions that he's gotten in his lifetime being a record, being incredible, and that these 3 prosecutions are because adepts have done things wrong, they've marked things wrong. I can't help but think to myself about the story of the Watcher in the Rain, where there's an adept on this world that's the way it gets swallowed by the warp, and she's knowingly doing things wrong. She's filling out forms, sending off faulty gas masks to front lines, sending off food that is going to get stale quite quickly and won't last as long as it's needed. And it's that sort of negligence in the Imperium that is pretty much prevalent in their society, as we find out throughout this story. And this is on Terra, which is the central nerve system of this interstellar empire. And what I find quite interesting is the fact that there are things going wrong. I'd understand if it was a planet that was quite far away and extremely out of touch with the Imperium, but was still responsible for some administrative duties and people were getting things wrong there, I'd understand that. But the fact that this is Terra, that, these people are getting things wrong, which could lead to demon incursions on a planet so easily because something's not gone reported properly. And apparently some of these scrolls as well are hundreds or thousands of years old, which for me is like, okay, that's quite interesting, because let's say he gets to an 1,000-year-old scroll, or if these scrolls are getting kept or stored for whatever reason, whether it's that they need to be read or it's stored because they don't want them to be damaged. And I do believe that is explained as well, that these scrolls are stored because they don't want them to be damaged. But what I can't help but think about is, have these scrolls been dealt with properly? Have they been read? Has the situation been resolved? There's also another part where, of course, they go on further, and there's scrolls getting disregarded, and some of these disregarded scrolls are of pleas for help. And this is where it comes to this, does the Imperium have the capability to survive for much longer in its current situation? Well, I suppose if you took away the fact that the Games Workshop, is selling the Imperium, because the Imperium is Space Marines, it's the Adeptus, what is it called again? The Imperial Guard, and also it's got so many other different factions to it, the Imperium. It's got the Adeptus Mechanicus, it's got the Sisters of Battle. But if you took away all of that and you just left the lore point of view, the story, the Imperium could collapse at any point, really. If this wasn't a story that was, part of a tabletop game, that was part of something that a big company like Games Workshop is selling, and let's say this was a author who was writing a story about this fantastic sci-fi setting, and he wasn't selling miniatures on a tabletop game, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a book that said the Imperium has fallen due to this and that reason, And that's why I think to myself, the Imperium is very lucky that it seems to be it's the best selling point in the Games Workshop, because it has so many different factions under it. But if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the fact that, this faction and that faction belong to the Imperium, and it makes Games Workshop a lot of money, I just wonder, in terms of lore, should the Imperium have collapsed a long time ago? Probably, because obviously you've got these things happening, and it's not just the fact that aliens are invading. You've got demonic invasions, you've got people turning against each other, you've got planets falling. It's the fact that documents about fallen planets are not getting stored properly, or are just disregarded. Like a star system could have fallen, and they're just disregarding it. They're just saying, just disregard this, we've got hundreds of other planets to look after. And I suppose that's the problem, is that the Imperium is such a big interstellar empire that, in terms of communication, I would say its communication is pretty weak. And I am going to explore this in another video at some point, where I'm going to compare different interstellar empires or societies, like the Imperium, the Empire, the Federation, and so on and so forth. And what I'll be exploring in those videos is basically about how these societies work, or not so much work, more about what they did right or what they did wrong, and what led to their ultimate downfall. In the case of the Imperium, of course, that won't happen. That video probably will never happen. This is why the Imperium of mankind fell. However, I might actually do a hypothetical video on that. This is why the Imperium of mankind fell. And I think that actually gives me an idea for some other things that I can look into, as to why the Imperium might fall, and so on. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things that can go wrong for such a big interstellar organization like the Imperium. There's a lot of things that could cripple it. At the end of the day as well, we've got the Indomitus Crusade, which is the second great crusade of the Imperium to reunify and reconnect it. And I just think to myself, how many great crusades do they need to be reunified before someone sort of maybe takes a step back and thinks, wait, this is the second or third great crusade we've had to do just to reconnect humanity. Is it worth it at this point? No, it is not worth it. So that's something that I think about quite a bit, is if this is their second great crusade, is it really worth it? Like, is it worth it? At the end of the day, What I want to know actually, as this video is coming to an end, is what you guys think. Do you guys think that the way that the Imperium treats information is right, or is it wrong? Should they be so willingly disregarding important information about a planet that's fallen? Because what I also wonder is how many of these documents get read properly, and how many of them think to themselves, oh, this is another star system that's gone? Or is it more they just don't care? Anyways, as this video is ending, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and keep your eyes peeled for the next video that I'm going to be doing very soon. I look forward to uploading that one. It might be next week at this point. But anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and take care now.